evening, Knoxville College family, friends, and members of our community. I want to welcome you to our Knoxville College United Way COVID-19 pandemic relief seminar. And today we're going to talk about money matters. Why making a budget really matters. A few weeks ago, we heard from Dr. Lee, who gave information about finances. And so today we're going to kind of piggyback on that talk and really spend some time, just a few moments, talking about budgeting and why does having a budget not hurt you, but how does it help you? Even in this COVID situation, why does having a budget really have a much greater impact, not only on your personal life, but also for your family, and also for anything that you might need to strive for to help your nuclear family survive this pandemic during this season. As I call it a season, because even with our seasons, how they change, things will change. But we know that as each season comes, there's a level of preparation that comes forward. And so for us, we want to make sure that we stay steadily prepared for this unknown, because we really don't know what each day holds. But we do want to make sure that we are moving in the right direction. Next slide, please. So when we talk about managing money, this is about knowing yourself. This is all about that personal intake about how do you handle money. And so as you sit back and you think, there are a few questions, that I listed. But the first one is probably the most important of all the statements. What kind of financial person are you? Some people are very good with money. Some people are very bad with money. And so you have to understand, are you on that good side or are you on that bad side? And that also translates into spending habits. What kind of spender are you? Are you an impulsive spender? Are you a nervous spender? Are you just a person that sees what they want and just go out and buy it? But also it's understanding your needs versus wants. And I liked when Dr. Lee was talking a few weeks ago, because we were in conversation about that very thing, before her presentation. And we were talking about, the big screen TVs and the PS5s and, the Xbox S and X's and all of these things, that are out here in the space. And of course, you've got your ads. It's Black Friday. People are selling things starting tomorrow, and people are going to look at things that they want. But I encourage you to think about things that you might need. And that is what also goes into that budgeting aspect. So also knowing yourself means creating a budget, creating a workable budget that works for you. What works for one person may not work for another. And so this budget becomes a personal document, a breathing, living document that not just helps you from day to day, but from month to month. Week to week, then broken down day by day so that you keep a better track of your spending. Knowing yourself also means that your budget is it's a family dynamic. So your finances are not just your own personally, because if you have a spouse, if you have children, all of that family dynamic goes into that budget, because you're providing for everyone that is inside of that nuclear household. And so for most of us, we live on fixed incomes. We know that every week you get certain amount. Every 2 weeks, whether it be on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday, you're going to get X amount. And so I laugh at people and they say, no matter how much money that you make, I know that every other Tuesday, I get this set amount, and it's what I have to live on and what I have to manage. And so, when I look at my checkbook, personally, I keep my checkbook down to the penny, of what I spend. And so, but I do know that I work within a budget because I do have a family and a mortgage and things that I do have to take care of to make sure my family is taken care of. And so financial excess and reductions, sometimes we have to look to see, what do we do in excess? What do we spend in excess versus things that we can actually reduce? There are a lot of things that we can cut out or excise, excise the excess. That should be really what we look at, during this season, especially when we know things are much tighter, than they've ever been before. It's how do we excise some of that excess and still be able to meet our needs? Next slide, please. So, who are you? We talked about knowing yourself, but even more, who are you? The old adage, you are what you eat. If people ate unhealthy, they'd be like, well, I'm going over here. And they'd be like, well, you are what you eat. But today, you are what you spend. And that's really, it's interesting, just from thinking about that viewpoint. You are what you spend. It's almost like the quote from Maya Angelou, when someone tells you, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. You are the same way when it comes to your money. You are who you are because this is where you put your money towards. And so there are two things that I have on that is very important. The first one is to reflect on, what you did prior to COVID. What were your spending habits prior to COVID? I mean, we're talking about going out to eat, going to the movies, because, you had all the blockbuster films coming out, the Avengers and all of the different movies that you would go and see at $20 a pop, and that's per person, to go in there and view, and the eating and the snacks. And so that was a lot of what we did prior to COVID. But also, I want you to reflect and think about what have been your spending habits since COVID. Are you doing more? Are you spending less? Are you running about the same? Those are some things to think about when it comes to who are you in regards to budgeting and planning and finance. Are you doing more? Are you doing less? Or are you doing the same? For me, it's less. I think I found myself doing less, and I've discovered that less is more. When we're able to get out and experience a lot of the things that we're looking at, in our life dynamic. But the predictability of habit determines the ability to make adjustments. And that's all about self-control. Budgets are all about self-control. They give you a parameter of spending. But are you, are you a habitual spender? Are you an impulse shopper? And my favorite one are the people who do retail therapy. When you don't feel well, you go shopping. When you get angry, you go shopping. When you're sad, you go shopping. When you're happy, you go shopping. And I know this because, when I go to the store, most stores have what playing? Music. And the music's playing, and I find myself singing and bouncing down the aisles and just dropping stuff in my cart because I'm not thinking about what I'm about to buy. I just feel really good. It's like therapy to go through that store and just start putting things in and putting things in and putting things in, but not realizing the very things that I'm dropping into it may not be what I need to have in it, and it needs to come out and come out. And so that is, in essence, what we look at as a total individual of what we're doing. And so a lot of, that spending and wants and needs, are more about how do you plan. Next slide, please. And it's all about how do you plan. So my questions to you this evening, they're just two. One is, do you have a budget? How many of you actually have a budget that you work off of for your days and evenings? And the second one is, how many of you actually stick to your budget? Because there'll be a lot of people that say, yeah, I have a budget, but I don't stick to it. I have a budget, but I just got it on paper just so that I feel good, throughout, my month. But for most things that we look at is having that budget and having the discipline to stick to it. And that is where it takes the most amount of self-discipline to have a budget and stick to it, because it's so easy, to say, hey, I've got this much set aside, but I really want that PlayStation. I know that it retails for $4.99. I know I can get the small version for $3.99. I know I can get that Xbox for $4.99 or get the smaller version for $3.99. I know I can cough up that $65 for that extra controller, that $70 for that Spider-Man, Miles Morales. But by the time you put that together, that is $700. Just like that. Now, how do I know people were willing to do that? When that PlayStation launched, they sold out in less than 30 seconds. People dropped that money in 30 seconds for those systems. Not only that, I saw the resale for those systems. $800, $1,000, $1,400. But the sad part is someone was willing to pay that much money for it. Just like that. And so it takes a lot of self-discipline to say, hey, I can wait for that, because it's not something that I need. It's something that I want. And I got a want list. Oh, trust me, I got a big want list. And I know exactly what I want, but I'm always told no. So I know that I can't have it right now. Does it mean that it can wait? Yeah, it can wait, because right now it's not a priority. It's not a necessity. And we have to remember that being, having a fixed income, or even having a non-traditional income stream where your hours are dependent upon work and dependent upon the amount of work that you have to have, makes having that budget even more important. And that's also important because for those that study, economics, we know that $1 today is not $1 tomorrow. The price of goods today is not the price of goods tomorrow. That $1 could have bought me 5 things today. It might buy me 4 things tomorrow. And so we have to be of that realization that things do change every day. But we have to be flexible enough to walk in and mirror and be able to navigate those changes, but at the same time know that this is the range in which I have to try to live. And so that all goes into making a budget. Next slide, please. And so when we look at making a budget, what do we put into it? And if you look at these 4 simple steps, this is what helps you. Review your income. Review your expenses. And take those expenses and line them up. Take out a piece of paper. On one side of the ledger, you'll have all your expenses. draw a line underneath it, create 2 columns. And from your expenses, and I would even say take what you did last month, for example, and go through that checkbook, write down those expenses, create 2 columns. In one column, write need, in the other column, write wants. And you take every item that you've expensed and put it into one of those categories and total it up. And you will see the things that you really needed, that you spent money on, versus the things that you wanted, that you spent money on. I think it would be a very eye-opening experience, to see that most of the things that we do go to wants, not needs. Well, why is that important? I'm glad you asked that question, because when we look at wants and needs, do you have, the iPhone 12? Do you have, all the sports packages on Comcast? Do you have the unlimited, data plan? Do you have, all of the live streaming services that are out there? Those are some major wants, because you need food, you need shelter, you need to make sure that you can take care of your family and that nuclear system that you have. But when you calculate all of those things, sit down with your family, show your family, have your kids sit with you, and don't be afraid to discuss finances with your children, because I think that you give them a better standpoint about being able to manage money as a youth, so that they grow up learning those principles, so that they grow up understanding that, hey, my parents just don't give me everything. Everything has a cost. Everything has a price. Everything in some form or fashion is a sacrifice. And my parents out there understand that word sacrifice. Because what is it that we sacrifice for our kids? Now, are we giving them what they want, or are we supplying them what they need? And that is always, what we have to teach our kids. So even when we put a budget together, have them sit and learn from you about those principles. It is the best teaching and learning exercise that you can ever give them. And so when you look at that and you calculate that budget, what do you have left? And then what do you do with what you have left? And so for most people, even when you have a budget, remember, pay yourself. You sacrifice and struggle to work. Make sure you pay yourself. And so these are all of the things that go into budgeting. Just those 4 simple things: to review what you spend, to sit down with your family, to look at your needs versus your want. But now, when you look at that needs versus your wants, it's going to ask you a question. Is it too much, or is it too little? Next slide, please. And so when we look at that, and it goes back to what I was just reflecting on, do you have that PS5? Do you have that Xbox? Do you have the latest Nike? Do you got those new, Michael Jordan shoes that are $200? Do you have the new, KDs? Do you have the new LeBrons or the Kyries? Do you have those things? Are you wearing the latest North Pole or and South Face and all of these things that are out there? Because these are the things that drive your reactions. And so now it is looking at that excess. And so when we look and reflect on what the coronavirus has done, not just to the United States, but look at how it has affected the world's economy. And even when you look locally, you don't have to go and look at what's happening in Knoxville. Look what's happening in your neck of the woods. Look at what's happening in small town USA versus big city USA. It doesn't matter. It is the same plight. It is the same pinch. It is the same feel. It is the same hurt. It's the same anxiety. It is the same fear. It is the same looking at the unknown. It is all of those things very much wrapped up into one. And so, yes, does every penny matter? Yes, it does. Because we don't know, one, how far reaching it will go. We don't know how long it will last. But there's been deep reduction in work because a lot of businesses are they're closing. They're cutting back hours. They're cutting back payroll. So yes, everything matters. And that struggle is real. That pain is real. That anxiety is real. That hurt is real. And it touches each one of us in different ways. But know that it does touch every person. No one is immune to that. And so that strain that it produces personally, that strain that it presents, professionally, inside of your family, all of those things are real and they should be acknowledged. Not blown away. They should be acknowledged and accepted and nurtured because it is real for us. It could be your neighbor. It could be your friend that's been furloughed, laid off, fired. This is what we face. And so when we look at that situation, we're just not living. We are all, in a manner of sense, surviving. And we're all surviving in our own little way. But we're not in this alone. Next slide, please. Because when we get across this river, we're getting across this river as a community. We're getting through this together, working together, partnering together, being responsible to and for each other, doing what it's going to take to help us get through this. And so, yes, we might need help. You might need help. I might need help. And there are resources out there that can help provide that counseling if you need it. But I want you to take these three things away as I close. One, look at that budget. Really take a look at establishing a budget to give you the guidelines and the parameters that you need. Two, don't worry about the Joneses. We always want to try to keep up with the Joneses. Don't worry about the Joneses. Focus on your family. Focus on the needs of your family. That budget helps you maintain that focus. It will help you stay grounded on that path. And the third thing, which I think is most important, don't let ego get in the way. If you need assistance, seek it out. And last week, we talked about a lot of the services that are here in Knox County and in the city of Knoxville. Think about those other resources that are in your communities that are listening to this within the sound of my voice. There are programs and assistance and agencies out there to help us, to help you, to help us all get through this. So if we know that assistance is out there, don't be afraid. Don't let the pride of saying, man, I don't really want to ask for help, get in the way. I believe that if we look and focus on those three things, it will help us. because we're all in this together. And we're only going to get through it together. I like that, no man is an island. We're not getting there by ourselves. We're not focusing on each man for himself. This COVID has really taught us that it's a community effort. And so as we, conclude this session, it is all about community. It's all about each other caring for each other collectively, individually, through our work, through our economics, through our support in our businesses, through everything that we can do. But at the end of the day, that is what's going to really separate us. It's not what we do for the most, it's what we do for the least. And right now, we're all in that least type of moment. So look at that budget, piece those things together, figure out what is going to be best for your family. And together, our families will strengthen our community, strengthen our state, strengthen our nation. So that is my one task, that I leave for you. If you don't do anything during this season, look at that budget, plan for it, and move for the future. So I thank you all. I thank, once again, this partnership between Knoxville College and the United Way of Greater Knoxville. I'm thankful for it. Thank you all for your time this evening. If you have any questions, please leave them in the box. Next week, we'll be having a final wrap up. We're not done with our COVID series. We're going to kick this off again in January. But next week's going to be our culmination session where we're all going to be together. This will almost be like an Ask the Doctors, type of form. And so we will all be together next week. And so if you have any questions about anything that you've heard, you can replay the sessions. And if you have a question, please bring them, send them to us. We are looking forward to having just a grand discussion about what we've learned from each other, over the past few weeks. I learned a lot from listening, to Dr. Bowers and listening, to Dr. Lee. And so we're going to sit down and just have a talk about what we've learned and how those principles can better help all of us and our greater communities. So we'll be doing that next week at 7:00. We look forward to having you. We look forward to seeing you. And I thank you for tuning in this evening. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there and to your families. Please be safe, be blessed, and we look forward to seeing you next week.